You never heard someone mention this: the rising adoption of cryptocurrency risks completely flipping the table of our traditional economic structure, and there could be a hell of a trouble to go through. Economist and investor Raoul Pal said something that I don't think is crossing enough people's minds, which is why I need to take a deeper dive into what the future could hold. Now, this is not financial advice, but subscribe to the channel and watch what he said before we dive in.
Unfortunately, I think the pieces are already on the table in terms of how we could potentially change the economic system, which is effectively Bitcoin. You have to remove the ability to inflate. Once you take that away, though, there are also consequences on the other side. And so it is a very, it's a very tricky
Which is my argument has been, you can't do this at once. Anybody who does this wants the end of the world. It has to happen as a glide path. And over time, the crypto side of the equation, the new rails for the system, can experiment, get itself sorted out, figured out, and then we can go. All you need to do is let it happen slowly and manage that transition. You'll be okay. There'll be times where it speeds up because we've got something bad going on, and there's times when it slows down. But and that's what I think the US government regulation is trying to do. They don't want to ban crypto. Just slow this down. Because if all the deposits leave the banking system, it's game over. If they don't set up a way of collecting taxes because everybody's living in crypto land and they have to ask your honesty in what trades you've done, that's not going to work for them because they can't pay the bills. So I think they're trying to catch up. I think that the UK will have a CBDC. I think the Europeans will. It's all coming relatively soon, next 5 years, 3 years, 4 years. And they'll feel more in control of the system that they've got because they need to pay the interest payments.
We've already been told that the banks hate Bitcoin, and now we know why. And to understand that, I want you to think of what the banking system is from a grand perspective. It's not just a group of institutions that takes in deposits, lends them out, and makes some profit for itself. Banks are like the nervous system of the economy with the central bank as its brain. The brain is where monetary policy is made, and the thousands of small and large banks are what put it into action. The central bank can adjust interest rates, deposit rates, inflation, currency, devaluation, money printing, and a whole lot more. And all the incredibly complex structure is kept standing only because of one thing. That's trust. The rise of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies will eventually erode the trust, but not before plunging the economy into a state of recession and turmoil as it undergoes the change over the decades. Cryptocurrency adoption has seen a rapid rise since 2018, and that's what has scared the banks about a world that could look like where people don't need them anymore for financial transaction. But this also ties into another function of that banking institution that's being threatened. Watch Raoul Pal lay out how bad it could get for the banks before you see how it relates to that function.
How bad do you think the banking crisis gets before it stabilizes?
So feels that we're in the kind of summer phase of, we know it's bad, but nothing extra is happening. But meanwhile, the deposits keep leaving the system because the Fed are whistling past the graveyard going, la, 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 I can't hear you. The problem is interest rates are too damn high, which is the same problem I said. They need basically to get back to zero again. And it's leaving the system. So there's two phases of this. One is the banks will start getting worse again. We'll see that use the KRE ETF, which is the regional bank ETF. It's easy. You can look at that, get it on Yahoo Finance, or wherever. You see the price of it going down. That's telling you it's kicking off again. And the outcome will be to keep bailing out these banks, whether they force them into mergers, which was how the banking crisis in 2008 started. And then eventually it's like, shit, we need to give money and sort this out. So we will see that. We know that the banking system can't go to a full-blown reset because we've already had that. I think it'll bring down one of the big banks before it gets really serious. And which one is that? I don't know. Bank of America, something like that. Their share price doesn't look great, the structure of it. But in the end, the Federal Reserve will come with their magic illusion bullet, the magic money. And that magic money will solve all of this, and we will all get mutualized because the asset prices will go up and we won't own enough of them and we will get poorer.
You know how massive of a crash that could set us up for? Here's a few starting facts to wake you up. Right now, the total money supply of the United States is around $21 trillion, with a sharp rise after 2020. And most of that money is obviously not in the form of cash and banknotes because nearly half of Americans don't use cash anymore for most of their purchases. Guess what that means? That money is on the form of digital dollars on computer ledgers and servers, and most importantly in the form of credit at the banks given out. If you understand how fractional reserve banking works, you know the banks keep only a small fraction of the money that they lend out as a reserve in case someone wants to withdraw their money. It provides vital liquidity for the bank to satisfy any withdrawals and keep a trust going in the financial system. That reserve ratio has been legally set at around 10% for most of the last century, but was lowered to zero as a legal requirement after 2020. That means that any black swan event or any degree of panic could prompt a large number of people to go and desperately try to withdraw their money. And if the bank fails to make everyone's payments, which they will because they don't have the reserve cash, then we're looking at a scenario where it's a run on banks on a much larger scale than what we witnessed recently with Silicon Valley Bank. That's a nightmare scenario that could set off a wave of panic and create a recession as everyone holds their cash and spending. That liquidity crisis and recession could push people further toward Bitcoin, accelerating the demise of traditional banking system. But the banks are not going to let that happen without a fight, and neither is the government. That is why we've seen them clamp down on crypto so heavily.
So that is coming. The commercial real estate, so the quick one is the deposit flight. The Fed needs to cut rates. The yield curve, which is the value of money in the future, of interest rates in the future, has to be higher than currently. It's the opposite right now. So that needs to happen. And then in 2024 and 2025, it'll all be about the commercial real estate. Because all of these, like Real Vision has offices in New York for 65 people and 3 people go to the office. The moment we can get out of our lease, we'll get out of our lease, as is everybody. And all of this stuff's going to be empty. So I think that will all end up on the Fed balance sheet. So the banking crisis will continue. It'll make it harder for the average person to get a loan. And the Federal Reserve will see this as the economy goes into recession, and eventually they'll start cutting rates, and eventually the more cowbell comes back. And as I like to say, it is written.
That's certainly scary, but for the average person, dangers exist in both the traditional financial system as well as the new and volatile world of cryptocurrencies. Imagine a hysteria in the opposite direction where everyone becomes over-enthusiastic about cryptocurrencies and dumps large sums of money into it. And then what if there's a massive crash that wipes out all of that investment? As crazy as it sounds, there are people that think that could happen, including people like Peter Schiff. He likened Bitcoin to a large bubble in a tweet that read, quote, "Typically when an asset bubble develops, there's at least some underlying value in an overpriced asset. But with Bitcoin, there's no value at all. Effectively, it's an asset bubble without a real asset. The ultimate bubble that may be why it's grown so large and lasted so long." Could something like that happen under a Donald Trump presidency? His potential return to office might trigger a market hysteria around Bitcoin, especially as Trump has announced that he wants to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world.
This afternoon, I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world, and we'll get it done. If crypto is going to define the future, I want to be mined, minted, and made in the USA. It's going to be. It's not going to be made anywhere else. And if Bitcoin is going to the moon, as we say, it's going to the moon, I want America to be the nation that leads the way. And that's what's going to happen.
It really does feel like there's troubles all around. The existing infrastructure of the economy, as well as any new potential systems, are full of risks and can tip the balance. That means that we need to be on guard for both and try to prepare on the degree that we can. That's the only way to survive in case we do go through a period of intense recession. And it may very well happen because this tussle between the banks and the world of crypto is only just beginning. Let me know in the comments how you see it playing out, because ultimately it's the individual moves on your financial chessboard that impact how the future turns out for you.